Hello everyone! Today I will show you how to knit this headband. This headband has a simple design. But now, it is a fashionable trend. The headband looks nice and goes well with any style. The headband has 2 layers and has no seams. It stretches great. You can knit it with knitting needles using the same yarn or another yarn that is similar in composition and length. The width of this headband is approximately 21 centimeters. The height is about 10 centimeters. You can knit this headband in any width and length. Now I am going to show the calculation for any headband size and for any yarn. I knitted the headband with this yarn. I used 1 skein of yarn for the headband. The yarn consists of 100% merino wool and has 115 meters in 50 grams. They recommend needles number 4 for this yarn. Yarn color is 45. I knitted the headband with number 4 knitting needles. You can use a number of needles you need for your yarn. Now let's talk about calculations. I am going to knit a headband for a head circumference of 58 centimeters. Then I subtract about 30% to make the headband fit better. I got about 40 centimeters, so the circumference of the finished headband should be about 40 centimeters. So, we measured the circumference of the head and subtract 30%. We get a number. Next, we knit a small pattern with knitting needles, wash it and dry it. After that, we proceed to the calculations. I need to know how many loops I have in 10 centimeters. So, in 10 centimeters I have 19 loops. So I get 19 loops in 10 centimeters. You can also calculate how many rows you need to knit to get a headband of the width you need. I have a small sample size, so I'm going to count the number of rows in 5 centimeters. So, I have 13 rows in 5 centimeters. Next, I'm going to count how many stitches I need to cast on for a 40 centimeters headband. After all calculations, I need to cast on 76 loops. And I also need to knit 26 rows to get a headband 10 centimeters high. I need to knit 26 rows on one side and 26 rows on the other side because the headband is double-sided. The main indicator is the number of loops that you need to cast on. I will cast on 76 stitches. You need to cast on as many as you get after calculations with your headband size. I will decide later how many rows of headband I will need to knit. Let's start knitting. To do this, I need knitting needles and an additional thread of a different color, about the same thickness as the main thread. I will also need a hook that matches the number for the yarn. I have a hook number 4.5. I make a loop and crochet 2 or 3 air loop. I use circular needle number 4. I cast on the stitches on the needles like this. I cast on 76 stitches. You need to cast on the number of loops that you got after the calculation. I cast on all 76 stitches like this. I crochet a few more stitches at the end. I trim the extra thread if necessary. I do not tighten the last loop. I distribute stitches evenly on circular needles. I check that the loops are not twisted. Now I start knitting with the main thread. I knit with the front stitch. I start knitting the front loops from the first loop. I knit the front loops to the end of the row. I also knit the last loop with the front one. I distribute the loops evenly again. I check that the loops are not twisted. I connect knitting in a circle. I use the simplest way to do it. I continue to knit the front stitch further in the round, starting from the very first loop and to the last. I knit the front loop first here, then I continue to knit the front loops with knitting needles. Next, I knit as many rows as necessary to obtain the required headband width with front loops. It can be 52, 56, or 60 rows, or the amount you need. It depends on how thick the yarn is that you use and how thick your headband is. I continue to knit a headband with front stitch to the size I need. Now my knitting looks like this. Here I knitted 56 rows. This is approximately 23 centimeters. The next step is sewing the headband. To do this, we need to remove the extra thread and place the loops on similar circular needles. I want to draw your attention to the fact that in the last row you need to finish knitting in the same place where you started in the first row. I take off the loops like this. You can also do it this way. Look! The first loop is in the same place on the knitting needles, both at the bottom and at the top. If something goes wrong, then at the bottom remove the loops from one knitting needle to another. The knitting needles and loops are symmetrically placed at the bottom and top here. This is necessary so that there is no twisting of the shape of the headband. I need the tip of the thread to be about 120 to 150 centimeters long for stitching the headband. Now I will sew the loops on the top and bottom with a knitted seam along open loops. For this I need a stitching needle. I hide this end of the thread inside. I sew the headband like this. I don't sew tight. It is necessary that the loops turn out to be approximately the same as those that you knitted with knitting needles. I copy this seam with a row knitted with knitting needles. I got a complete copy of knitting, and the seam is not visible at all. At the end of the row, I stitch like this. Here we sew the last loop with the first. Here I am masking the hole now. Now I hide the ends of the threads. I fix them first. Next, I hide the ends of the threads inside the headband like this. That's it. The headband is ready. Thanks for watching. Bye.